Okay, good evening, everyone who's here. I mean, it's me and you. So this evening we'll be presenting the Q&A for the Board of Governor Representative, the presidential debate, and finally the Q&A for the Faculty of Agriculture Representative. I'm your moderator for the evening, Abiru Piramilli, and a few announcements before we start. The DSU is located in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We seek to honor the relational treaty process and our obligations as treaty people in our programming, events, meetings, and interactions. So, to limit disruption, every candidate and audience member is required to turn off their mics. So, only the candidates who are right now, who have their slot right now, are to turn on their camera and mics for the debate or the Q&A. The meeting is being recorded. So, and finally, the chat feature is turned off. At the end of the debate or Q&A, the audience will be given the opportunities to ask questions by raising their hands at any point. They can then unmute their mics and ask away. If an audience member is being disruptive, they will be removed from the meeting. So the first event of the night is the Board of Governors Representative Q&A. I will be asking questions to the candidate and they will have 90 seconds to respond. This will go on for about 20 minutes, after which the floor will be open for the audience for questions. When 5 seconds are left, I'll raise my hand to indicate that. I will have to unfortunately cut you off at the end of 90 seconds. So yeah, Ishan, Aurora, you have to turn on your camera and unmute your mic, so the whole audience can know who the representative is. Hey.
Hi there, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good. How about you?
Good, good.
Okay. So I just have a few questions. A few are made by me, and I've also got a few from other students. So it's just like a few questions for you. Basically, we'll go on until 8:20, 6:20. Sorry, we'll go on until 6:20, and then the floor will be open for the audience. So first question, you have 90 seconds to answer each question. And at the end of 90 seconds, I'll unfortunately have to cut you off. I'll raise my hand to indicate when 5 seconds are left. Okay. So first question, why are you running and how are you qualified for this position?
Sure, yeah. So I'm running again for re-election for this Board of Governors representative position because I feel like over the past year, given my experience with the Board of Governors and various other senior administrative roles that I have my capacity in, that I've gotten a greater understanding of the overall bicameral structure of Dalhousie's administrative structure. And in my various roles and positions, I've been able to successfully advocate and speak on various student issues. And in addition to my position on the Board of Governors caucus as well. And so I'm running again for re-election because I feel like it's after 1 year of successfully being able to understand and learn the overall structure, I can continue to do so successfully and just bring greater student representation to senior admin. Sorry, I think you're muted.
Sorry, my bad. Okay, so next question. So what previous experience do you have working in the DSU and how will that help you here?
Sure, yeah. So my experience working in the DSU, I serve on various committees within the DSU, including the Society Review Committee, the Grants and Sponsorship Committee, and the Psychoeducational Assessment Ad Hoc Bursar Committee. In addition to those committees, I also serve on various university senior admin committees. These include the Capital Projects and Facilities Committee, which was given courtesy of my position on the board. As a student representative, I also am a observing member on the Academic and Student Affairs Committee of the board. And I also serve on various Senate committees, including the Senate Learning and Teaching Committee and the Undergraduate Academic Programs Senate Subcommittee. So throughout all these, various experiences, I've been able to get to know various members of senior admin on a personal basis and continue advocating for my various goals and missions, specifically with regards to EDIA, thoroughly through all these various roles.
Okay, thank you. So what are your main priorities as a crucial link with the Dalhousie Board of Governors?
Yeah, absolutely. So, with the Board of Governors, obviously, we do have a fiduciary duty to uphold to the university as a whole. So, although this is a position that is elected through the DSU elections, it is a bit of a unique position whereby our priority does have to remain to uphold the best benefits of the university. However, as a member of the Board of Governors caucus, I do support the DSU president in bringing up petitions and various issues to be presented to the Board of Governors every meeting. So they have the president has 5 minutes to present any issues to the Board of Governors. And so I assist the president in fulfilling those in the Board of Governors caucus meetings. But aside from that, I do try to advocate for student goals overall in terms of housing, in terms of ensuring equity and inclusion throughout our, baseline under student processes, because oftentimes one thing I do notice is that on the senior admin, we hear lots of things like our third century promise, right? Dalhousie's goals and missions for the future, right? And when you hear those, you hear like, okay, Dal has some good missions and goals at hand. But then being a student, you also get to see the bottom line, right? And you get to see like, okay, so at the top they're saying all these great things, but at the bottom line, you're not seeing that much, you're not seeing those being implemented. And so that's kind of, as a student representative, you have that unique position to advocate accordingly.
Thank you. So a question adding on to that, what does equity mean to you?
Yeah, equity means for me is ensuring that we recognize and properly accommodate to students who have various different backgrounds, especially those from first generation, low income, or racially marginalized communities. So one of the communities and organizations which I actually run as program co-head is the Dalhousie Science Scholars and Leaders Program. And so that's a program which aims to kind of recognize the historical inequities that marginalized communities in STEM fields have faced, and try to equally prepare them for the future in university academia, recognizing that generational knowledge is something that people who, if you have your father, grandfather, who have all been in, say, let's say a doctor or lawyer, you're going to gain more information from them, like at the family table, than if you're the first in your family to pursue these areas, right? And so that hidden curriculum is something that we really need to kind of spread and share to a lot of students, because oftentimes, even like these DSU elections, there's a lot of students who aren't aware of these positions. As you might be aware, although I'm happy to be able to run again for my position, there's quite a few other positions other than for the exec positions that don't have any competition. There's only one person running for them, right? Why is that? Because there's a lack of knowledge and awareness for many students to even be aware that, oh, this Board of Governors position is something that they can run for, right? And so, although I'm happy to be able to run again for it, I would ideally like to share this and to make it something that someone next year could replace me.
Okay, thank you. So another question related to that, what is the biggest issue you have faced in your previous roles that you can work towards in this role?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think throughout my first year in this position, at first, as with I think any student in interacting with senior admin, there was a level of shyness at first. It's certainly a very interesting experience to being, talking to the president, to the chancellor, to all these vice provosts, right? It is a very, daunting experience at first. But now, having successfully navigated 1 year of doing that, I now know them all on a personal basis. So it's easier for me to approach them and speak on certain issues with more confidence than say I would have during my first few months of tenure in the Board of Governors rep position this past year. And so now, thankfully, with that knowledge and experience I've gained this past year, I look forward to being able to continue to advocate for more roles and positions. Now knowing all these various senior admin people on a personal basis.
Thank you. So next question would be, describe how your role relates with your personal values.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the Board of Governors rep position wasn't something that, when I was in first year, I kind of was like, oh yeah, I want to go and do that. It was something that kind of just I came across. And at this point last year, when I was running for my first term, I had spoken with the incumbent BOG rep and gotten to kind of know and really understand what this role entails, and understand the overall bicameral structure and of governance and what have you. And I think that understanding the nuances of what this means is something that I was just naturally attracted to and to learning towards about, because like even something as simple as what the difference between a vice president versus a vice provost. Many students don't actually know what the difference is there, right? So a vice president is for certain administrative things like finances or HR, or what have you, whereas a vice provost works specifically on student-based issues, right? So learning those nuances, things like that over my past year has been a an enriching experience for me, and now I'm looking forward to now having understood and having an understanding of the overall structure to continue pushing for advocacy.
Thank you. So, apart from being the Board of Governors rep in the previous term, how in other ways, like how have you been involved with the university governance?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I did mention, I do sit on various Senate committees as well. And so these were positions that I didn't run an election for, but as courtesy of my membership as a DSU councilman, I was able to become aware of these various positions, and I've been volunteered to just sit on Senate Learning and Teaching Committee and an undergraduate academic programs committee. And in doing so, the Senate committee is actually quite an interesting experience, because although the board certainly does have the final say on a lot of motions and stuff as such, Senate is actually a very different experience where you actually have a lot more deliberation and back to back questioning, whereas when it gets to the board, it's really just final say, making sure things are good, and also nominating executive positions. So in this past year, we actually had two very big positions, the president and the chancellor, which we elected our first female president and our first racialized chancellor this past year. And so that was obviously an honor to be able to work on supporting that. But in the Senate as well, getting to work on that deliberation and again, like I was mentioning, build that confidence to just be able to speak up. And apologies, I think the motion sensor just moved, so just give me 1 second. But being able to get that confidence to speak was really a great experience. Just 1 second, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Sorry, you have to run to get them back on.
Oh, it's fine. So, moving on, the next question. What is the most pressing issue that you plan on advocating towards?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, recognizing my unique position as a Board of Governors rep is while there are, various student issues that exist, right? Like housing, student, the costs for tuition, things like that. Like those are obviously continuing issues that will always exist. But again, as I previously mentioned, my role is a unique one in which, although I am a TSU councilman, my fiduciary duty does have to prioritize that of the university as first. But I do support the president in putting motions towards the BOG caucus. But I think, we could just easily say oh yeah, I'm going to advocate for tuition and all this other stuff. But the reality is that's not something that realistically is going to change. That is something that's for the most part stable. Apologies. But instead, I think my main thing that I like to bring forth is mentioning things of equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, especially like as I mentioned, being a student rep on the bottom line. A lot of times people in the senior admin, they're aware and having these goals in mind, the third century promise, all these things they have in mind, but they're not aware of the bottom line processes and stuff that are going on, right? And so for me as a student to be able to bring that to attention to senior admin and inform them of what various issues and processes and various organizations exist on a bottom line level, to therefore bring that to their attention so they can perhaps increase funding, increase acknowledgement and support those organizations is an important thing, because oftentimes these senior admin people aren't going out of their way to become informed of them.
Okay, thank you. So how do you plan on doing that? Like, how do you plan on bringing these issues up to the respective people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way of saying that is just saying how I have been already doing it. So, like I mentioned, the Dalhousie Science Scholars and Leaders Program is a program that I personally have been working and supporting as a co-head. And so, even though the Board of Governors, like my responsibility as the rep is simply just to attend those meetings, the best thing is in the terms of social networking and the access of being able to become informed and connected with these various individuals is the ability to then speak with senior admin on an off board basis, becoming like getting to know them on a personal basis allows me to then ask and get to speak with them in a non board mate way, and it's set up our own one-on-one meetings in which I have been pushing forward many different issues and things. Even just an example, one of my most recent things, even not necessarily about EDIA, was advocating for getting DAL cards on your phones. So like Apple Pay and like Android, like the wallet pays. Very simple thing. A student had just mentioned it to me one day, and I was like, you know what, that's actually a good idea. And so just knowing some of the vice provosts and people in the DAL card office, just as courtesy of my position, I'm able to then just send them an email utilizing my position status as Board of Governors rep to bring that to their attention, and now they're looking into it and doing some more work on it. So yeah, that's kind of, I think that's the best way of moving things forward is although in our board meetings we have a certain agenda, is connecting with them out of that lens, being able to connect with them on a one-on-one basis.
That's fair. So another question is, so what's an issue you faced in your first term that you wish to improve on if you get a second term?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me would be just balancing and having a clear set of goals that I want to ensure that I get done by the end of my first by the end of my ideal second term, right? So while I entered my first term with a very limited knowledge and understanding of the overall senior admin structure, thankfully over this past year, again, like I mentioned, I've been able to gain an understanding of the various bicameral governance structure, what the various positions do. Who do I go for if I want to talk about something like this, or who do I go to if I want to talk about something like that, right? I've learned that over this past year, right? So now, ideally, if I get a second term, my goals, like as I mentioned, I have various different goals, and especially with those in regards to EDIA, but to have those kind of just jotted down and see like by the end of my second term what I can do to push those forward, and also be ensure that I can find and share this position to get someone to replace me at the end of my second term, because like I mentioned, there's a lot of times lack of knowledge and awareness of these types of positions.
Okay. So now I have one last question. So why should the voters vote in your favor?
Yeah, I mean, I think given my experience over the past year, given my understanding and knowledge of what this role entails, and my success in advocating and working over this past year, I think I am the best suited candidate for this. And I think that, the reality is the work that can be done in this position, although from a DSU council position, is limited in terms of the board. I think my work on the DSU as a whole and my various different committees that I've been a part of has shown to be quite successful and appreciated. And I think I can continue to do so on the board and the Senate as well.
Perfect. So that's all the questions we have, like the previously noted down questions. The floor is open to the audience. If anyone wants to ask a question, just raise your hand, and yeah, we'll wait for a minute or so. And
Sure.
yeah. I mean, I'd say like there's no questions right now. So let's see. Like we have reached the end of the Q&A now. Like, looks like there's no more questions. So this would be the end of the BOG representative Q&A. And thank you for being here. Thank you for everyone for being here. And now we'll commence at 6:30 with the presidential debate. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm your moderator for the evening, Abhirupi Ramilli. It's 6:30 p.m. and now we are commencing the presidential debate. A few announcements before we start. To limit disruption, every candidate and audience member is required to turn off their mics. Only the candidates are to turn on their camera and mics for the debate here. This meeting is being recorded. And finally, the chat feature is turned off. At the end of the debate, the audience will be given an opportunity to ask questions by raising their hands at any point. They can then unmute their mics and ask away. If an audience member is being disruptive, they will be removed from the meeting. So tonight, this debate is about the discussion of ideas and actions. All candidates here are to help the DSU and the students to have a positive time here at Dalhousie University. I will go over a few quick rules and then we will get started. So first, one candidate will be asked a question and the candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to the question. Other candidates will have 90 seconds to respond, repeat the first candidate. I will raise my hand like this to indicate the final 5 seconds. So it gives you time to wrap up your point. And then I will have to interrupt you. For a few questions, there will be a maximum of 5 minutes provided for a discussion after the initial responses. Each candidate will get 45 seconds and then we'll go on to the next candidate. You can get multiple chances to speak in the discussion. Every candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement and at the end, 1 minute for a closing statement. And the structure of the debate will be me asking the questions and the candidates will respond in the order I asked them to. During a debate question, first, all the candidates will put their initial responses out there. And then basically you just raise your hand and you just get a chance to speak like for 45 seconds. This is to ensure that all the candidates get an opportunity to speak and it's not just a discussion between a couple of candidates, for instance. So there will be a 10-minute break around 7:30 p.m. We will finish the debate with around 15 minutes to spare. And these 15 minutes will be more or less a Q&A with the audience. Candidates have to address the moderator, which is me, in the responses and rebuttals. Candidates, like, there's no crosstalk between the candidates. Uh, you're not to talk down or discriminate or mock the other candidate when you're like rebutting their claims. So now transgressions, three categories to keep in mind. The first is minor transgressions, which is it does not affect the debate much. This basically means like if a candidate is talking, another candidate interrupts them like to add on or second their point or something. And then you have moderate transgressions, which involve more disruptive behavior, which is interruptions to disagree or continuing to speak after they are cut off by the moderator. These won't have warnings. Minor transgressions will, but after that, fines will be levied. And finally, serious transgressions, which are extremely disruptive situations. This includes threats, revealing personal information, or spreading false information. This will result in the candidate being removed from the debate and can be subjected to fines and penalties up to immediate disqualification. So I request the presidential candidates to turn on, 1 second. I have to like give you permissions for that. Okay, perfect. Okay, I request the presidential candidates to turn on their cameras and mics. And yeah, that being said, I'll just wait for everyone. I think you have access to turn on your camera and stuff, John. It does show me that you have access to turn on your camera and everything. Can you? I don't know what the issue is. Does that fix it? Maybe can you join with your DAL email? That should also work. You will just wait really quick. Okay.
It appears to be fixed.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, how's everyone doing? Doing good? Okay.
Good.
So
Pretty good.
now we can start the debate. All candidates have 2 minutes to give their opening statements, starting with Sharath.
Hope you can hear me right.
Yep.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm Sharath Krishnaraj here, and I go by he and him. Thank you for joining this evening. And as many of you know that I've been involved in various student societies, residence life and mentorship positions over the past few years. And I believe that the DSU has been working hard to meet the student needs. But as an industrial engineer who always look to optimize ways, I think there's scope for improvement and which can be made around the student, which can be made around the campus to ensure that students' needs are met and their face towards success. With this, I'm confident to bring to the table the desired passion, experience, and leadership skills to steer us towards a better future. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. So now we have Mariam. You have 2 minutes.
Sorry. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's debate. My name is Mariam Kanakri. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm in my 4th year, double majoring in environmental science and environment sustainability and society. In the past year, as a president, my commitment as serving as your president extended far beyond mere leadership. It was dedication to actively listening and responding to the needs of both the Dalhousie Student Union and every individual within our diverse student body. I firmly believe that to effectively represent our students, we must foster a healthy internal environment within the DSU, one that reflects the principles and visions of the students we serve. To this end, I embarked on a journey of transformation, restructuring the organization from within to ensure alignment with the aspirations and values of our community. This restructuring was not merely cosmetic or about hierarchy. It was a deliberate effort to create an environment where every voice is heard, every concern is addressed, and every opportunity pursued for the students and by the students. That's what we always say. Central to my mission has been the urgent task of addressing pressing issues such as food insecurity. So no student should have to endure hunger while pursuing their education. Students should not have to choose between their studies and having to work hard to be able to pay their bills. Through initiatives that I have worked on as a president, like Giving Tuesday, for example, I rallied with relevant stakeholders, including Dalhousie alumni, and raised $75,000 for the DSU Food Bank, ensuring that no student goes hungry under my watch. Beyond our campus borders, I've been a vocal advocate for our students on provincial and federal levels as well, fighting to make an education or our education more accessible and equitable for all students, from advocating for increased funding for essential student services to increasing international students' working hours. I've pursued avenues to amplify the voices of our student body. So thank you for your trust and your support and your commitment to building a community where every student can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. So, John, you have 2 minutes.
Awesome. Well, first of all, I want to be very grateful to see such a great slate of candidates, not just for the position of president, but also for all the other positions. I think that it's amazing to see so many people of quality putting their names forward and putting their ideas forward for various positions. So I'd like to start with that. So my campaign is pretty clear. I have, my 3 points, my 3 commitments, which is to give myself a little bit of a pay cut, to increase the funding for societies and to increase the funding for student life events, because I believe that the DSU should be focused on things that improve life on campus, like a laser beam. So yeah, I'll yield my time to the chair.
Okay, thank you. So now we can start with the first question. The first question is a general question. Why are you running in the election and how are you qualified for this position? John, you're first.
Yeah, so I'm running because, I've been a part of societies and, in my view, the DSU has some work to do in terms of responsiveness and in terms of funding for societies. So, that's kind of my reason for running. I have experience in the world of politics. I worked for the provincial government in Nova Scotia under Premier McNeil. And I also served on a campaign for mayor of Vancouver. So I have experience in politics, and I'd like to bring my experience and bring my ideas forward in order to benefit life on campus at Dalhousie.
Okay, perfect. Now, Sharath, you have 90 seconds.
Right. Yeah. My journey at Dalhousie has been transforming, offering me not just education, but a community of rich in diversity, ideas, and potentials. I'm running for the present position because I'm passionate about harnessing these potentials to create a positive change. Through my involvement in various student organizations and initiatives, I've seen firsthand the challenges that the students face, and I'm motivated to address those challenges head on, ensuring that our campus becomes a more supportive, inclusive, and vibrant place for all our students. Thank you.
Perfect. Mariam, you have 90 seconds.
Yep, I'm running because I'm very confident and I'm confident that I'm capable of this position. I have been a president for a year and I know the darkest secrets of the DSU, its operations, how, apologies for the light, how we deal with students and how operations work in and outside of the DSU. So I just believe I have all the experience needed. And besides all of this, I was also a senior sustainability ambassador in the UAE. So I've worked with ambassadors. I've actually met the president of the DSU. I've worked on political and social initiatives my whole life. And I think that's more than enough for such a position. Thanks.
Thank you. So moving on to the next question, what is the biggest challenge that you will face while holding the position, or if you held the position in the previous term? Mariam, you're first.
Absolutely. From experience, the challenge is student engagement. You think you can get everyone's attention, but it's definitely hard. We have tried different avenues this year to be able to reach to the students, and it seems like some of them are working better than others. I will be expanding on this in the upcoming questions, but that is the first main challenge. Another thing I think is some students don't understand that being a president is not just about advocating for students, but you're also taking care of the union, its operations. You're taking care of the food downstairs. You're taking care of the full-time staff. You're taking care of the executives. Those are challenging because if you were not an employer or a manager in the past, then that's a new experience for you.
Okay, thank you. John, you're next.
Yeah, so I'll echo Miriam. I agree that student engagement is super important and is something that I want to work on. I want to have more students, when they think of the DSU, have a positive outlook, right? And I think that my campaign talks a lot about things that students would engage with, such as societies and such as student life events. So I'll echo Miriam's point, and I agree too regarding the food bank. I think that's a great initiative, and regardless of who wins this election, I'd like to see that expanded upon.
Okay, thank you. Sharath, you're next.
Sure. Can you just repeat the question one last time for me?
Yeah, for sure. So from your perspective, what is the most important issue that the that's the one, right? Yeah, from your perspective, what is the most important issue that the DSU president faces, and how do you plan on addressing that issue?
Okay, being a DSU president, it comes up with a lot of challenges. As Mariam said, the student engagement is one major thing, because without student engagement, we can't really have a strong support to execute any orders or such that. And there are also other criteria that come up, like managing people, speaking to the governors, and making sure you have a good emotional intelligence to be able to understand the students' concern and even the Board of Governors and the Senate's concerns, and how you can link the gap between those two is one of the major pressing issue of a difficult point during as a DSU president. So, yeah.
Perfect. I think we skipped over to the next question for
Okay.
Sharath. Okay, no worries, it's fine. Mariam, same question for you. From your perspective, what is the most important issue that the DSU president faces, and how do you plan on addressing that issue?
There are unfortunately so many pressing issues around students or just the DSU specifically, but I would say housing. Housing is an issue. It is a crisis in Halifax, and I think without housing, students are not going to be able to study, pursue adequate education. And so I have been working diligently this year on initiatives, but specifically working with Dalhousie on their new housing project that we're working on. And my part of it is to voice our students, but also make sure that this housing is affordable and accessible, because it's something to have housing and vacancies and something else to make it accessible for our students. So definitely housing.
Okay, perfect. John, you're next. What is the most important issue that the DSU president faces, and how do you plan on addressing that issue?
Yeah, so I agree with Miriam in terms of housing being a very pressing issue. I would say in terms of what I'm looking at, I'm looking more at like what very specifically does the DSU have direct jurisdiction over, and I'm thinking about societies. Because if I think about my life on campus, my life has been ameliorated so much through involvement in societies. I've met so many new people. I've gone on trips. I've done so many cool things. So I think that one thing that the DSU can do is dramatically increase both the support in terms of like financial, but also logistical, right? In terms of booking meeting rooms and things like that. I think that will be the thing, after getting elected, we'll see. But that will be the first thing that I'll look at is how can I work harder to help societies?
Okay, perfect. So now back to Sharath, like the one question we skipped. What is the biggest challenge that you will face while holding the position?
I feel the biggest challenge I would face personally while holding the position would be time management and people management, because it's not easy managing, like speaking to students and then conveying what they say to the Board of Governors and like debating over it and lobbying the government to get more funding. So that is one pressing issue which I think I'd face a challenge about, but I do strongly believe I'm capable of dealing with those issues and making sure everything goes on pretty well.
Okay, thank you. So now we go to John. What is the biggest impact that you will make while holding the position of the president, if elected?
Well, the biggest impact that I hope to make is getting people more involved in life on campus. I think that for a while, I mean, I started my time at Dal during COVID, right? So campus life was basically non-existent, right? It was on Zoom. So since then, I've become more involved on campus and parts of societies and attended events, and it's been such a great opportunity. So I would like to see more people have those opportunities, and I think the DSU has a big role to play, and I think they can play a bigger role than they currently are in terms of fostering that.
Thank you. Mariam, you're next.
Could you repeat the question for me, please?
Yeah, for sure. What is the biggest impact that you will make while holding the position of the president, if elected?
I think there's a lot, but I definitely want to focus on our relationship with the government. There's so much that we can do as an institution. There's so much that we can do with the collaboration with DAL, but there is only so much we can do with the government. The government actually did express this year that it's been the first year in quite a while that the DSU has been active on a provincial and federal levels, which is a great win for us. And so definitely something to continue working on. And this is one of my biggest goals. Otherwise, there are minor ones like continuing working on stuff that I do in the academic support realm, such as working on the grading regulation policy change that I am currently working on.
Okay, perfect. Sharath, it's you. 90 seconds. biggest impact that you will make while holding the position of the president if elected?
I feel that it's not just one impact that a president would create during their presidency. There are like multiple smaller impacts which groups up to form a major impact. And I feel like there's a lot of facilities on campus that can be improved. And as John said, the funding for the societies is a major part. And even as Mariam states, like connecting with the province and getting more funding to provide for like the housing and the food and more important criteria is one of the things I would strive on working. And that's something I would look forward to do during my presidency.
Thank you. So we move on to the next question. What do you think is one thing the current or the previous DSU president has done that you consider like a major positive? So for you, it will be like someone before you. Mariam, you're first. Yeah. For you, it will be someone before you.
That I consider what?
Something they have done that you consider to be a major positive move, or something that has major positive consequences.
I think it was sitting with the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. He was invited to Nova Scotia, and the past president has taken the initiative to actually sit down with him and talk. The talk was specifically about international students and their issues, and the Prime Minister actually was very much speechless. So she did hit him in where it hurts, and I feel like that was very much needed because we basically showed him the reality of how student life is like, and she was representing all of us at that point.
Perfect. It's you, John. What do you think is one thing that the current or previous DSU president has done that you consider like a major positive?
So I think that the work you've done with the food bank at the DSU has been great. I fully agree that nobody should be forced to go to class hungry, and I think that's an initiative that I hope will continue regardless of who wins this election.
Sharath, 90 seconds for you. What do you think is the one thing that the current or previous DSU president has done that you consider to be a major positive?
I feel like the current president, Mariam, has done a really good job in, as John said, addressing the food security. And one more thing that I personally noticed is how good the O-Week went. And I've personally seen the impact it has created on the students in the residence, because I do mentor a lot of students, and how much of an impact that has made on their lives and that has continued over till now is mind-blowing. So that is something, irrespective of who wins the election, I would strongly suggest them to focus on as well.
Okay, perfect. So now moving on to the next question. What previous experience do you have in working with the DSU? Sharath, you first.
I've not personally worked with the DSU, but I've actively been a part of many societies, currently being the president for the Industrial Engineering Society, and I've also been a CAT in the residence for the past 2 years. And I feel that these experiences have helped me gain a lot of leadership skills and mentoring skills. And I feel that it has prepared me more to be a better candidate in the DSU elections and be an advocate for the students themselves. Thanks.
Perfect. Mariam, you're next. 90 seconds.
Could you give me the question again? Sorry.
Yeah. What previous experience do you have working with the DSU?
I mean, as obviously a current president,
apart
there
from
is a
the
lot.
presidential role here. in this
Apart what,
sense.
sorry?
Apart from your previous term as the president.
So, oh yeah, I actually worked at the info desk here in the DSU, and that's what kind of encouraged me to apply for presidency. I like to meet the execs, and I was able to learn more about their positions. And again, that's what encouraged me. Otherwise, I was in 2 different societies. One of them was actually Minad, so we were representing women from the Middle East, from the MENA area, which was very important and very needed on campus. I think this just gave me the strength to understand, 1, how the DSU works, 2, how much societies are very important, and 3, how representation is great. It's similar also to saying that I sat on a committee that chose our first woman as the president of the Dalhousie. So again, representation really matters.
Thank you. John, it's you. What previous experience do you have working with or in the DSU?
Yeah, so I'll echo Sharath. I don't have experience either on council or on the executive, but I do have experience working with the DSU regarding society stuff. I will also add that I'm a frequent of the Greywood, which is in the sub and related to the DSU. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, perfect. So we'll have a short discussion now on this question. First, we'll just go through all the candidates and get your initial opinions or initial comments, and then we'll just have a short discussion. If anyone wants to add any comments or anything, we'll go through that. So the question is, what would you say is the most important character trait a person should have as the president of the DSU? Mariam, you're first.
Sorry. How many seconds do I have for this one? Is it also 90?
Yeah, this is 90 seconds.
Cool. I think a lot, but again, experiencing being a president already has taught me that being a president is not just advocacy work. It's taking care of people, it's listening to people, it's doing a lot of internal and external stuff. For example, I sit also on a provincial committee, such as the Provincial Sexual Violence Prevention Committee, and that's a lot of responsibility for a student who just became a president and just has enough experience for that. I think the most important trait is confidence, because even if you did not have enough experience, you have the confidence to actually learn more. And again, that equally means learning and actually not being afraid to say no and not being afraid to take a step forward. For this year, for example, I noticed that the VPs were kind of like all over the place. There wasn't very like a cohesive structure from the past president. And so what I did was I established the WebU, or the weekly progress updates that they give me every week, which was very successful.
Okay, that's really nice. Now, John, you have 90 seconds. What would you say is the most important character trait a person should have as the president of the DSU?
So I personally think that the trait would be focus. So focusing on the DSU and what realistically the DSU can do to improve life on campus. And this is exactly what I want to do. I want to make sure that the DSU is focused like a laser beam on the areas in which it improves campus life, such as societies, such as the Greywood, such as advocacy in terms of student issues, such as advocacy in terms of the conversation that Miriam's having about the requirements for grades. I think that a focus on campus life, a focus on students would be the greatest trait that somebody could bring forward.
That's nice. Sharath, you have 90 seconds. What would you say is the most important character trait a person should have as the president of the DSU?
Well, the president of the DSU is a very important position to begin with at Dell, and it isn't just one trait that would justify it. So I believe that emotional intelligence, and as Mariam said, confidence, and being proactive towards whatever events are happening around campus and making sure you take a step ahead, take the initiative to get things done. And last thing would be thinking outside the box, because there'd be many instances where things would not work out. You might have clashes and stuff like that, but bringing up innovative ways to think and getting stuff done is one of the most important traits that needs to be held with the DSU president. And I totally believe Mariam has them all as well.
Perfect. Does anyone have any comments to add or any rebuttals?
Yeah, I think I can add something. I think it's also very important to talk about the pragmatic leadership. It's something to say, I will do that and this, and it's something else to actually achieve them. I think all of my goals that I've mentioned in my questionnaire and anything that I'm going to be talking about right now, or I have established in the past year, are feasible and attainable goals. I'm not saying I'm going to decrease tuition. I'm not saying I can freeze tuition or completely decrease housing fees in the province. Those are not necessarily unattainable goals, but goals will need you at least 3 years long. And so what I try to focus on are things things that I can actually achieve, such as increasing bursaries, which I've done this year with 6 new bursaries, caring about academic support, such as the grading policy that I'm working on and co-op improvements. So yeah, just keeping in mind that you have 1 year and you can only establish so much.
Perfect. Does anyone else want to add anything? Okay, then we'll move on to the next question. So this question is from a society head. They have said that the current system of communication between society heads and the DSU is unsustainable, and further inaction will result in student societies losing any drive to continue operating. How will you ensure that the communication gap between the society heads and the DSU is bridged? Like, what efforts will you put? So, Sharath, first.
Okay. So to begin with, I do understand that being in a position at DSU, whoever manages the email, like the VPs of socials or something, they do get a lot of emails from all the societies in Dell, and it is very hard for like one individual or two individual to like manage them. So it would be better if you can have a structurized way to manage those emails and forms, such a way that we can have a hierarchy where one person, whoever gets the email, he diverts them to whoever is in charge of that particular question they're asking, and that will narrow down to faster progress and what they want to do as well. Yep, that's, yeah.
Perfect. Mariam, you're next.
That's actually a great question because I have a great answer. I've heard that from last year. A lot of societies did reach out saying that there was a miscommunication and there was literally no transparency at all. I was able to meet with 3 societies at one time to discuss like an issue going on, and they expressed that this was the first time they heard from a president telling them that they can sit down. In fact, I heard societies saying that the previous executives told the current executives of a society that they should never reach out to us because we are not communicative. So it's been an issue for quite a while, and I actually have done something to deal and solve this. We hired commissioners for all of the VPs and the president to be able to have this kind of bridge and communication between us, the societies, us, the staff, us with the students. So it's basically us on a smaller level beside us that can help us with all of the fiduciary duty that we have, including emails, for example. As Sharath said, I get over 60 emails a day, I would say. And so I definitely need help with that. I did not have a commissioner this year, unfortunately, but I'm very glad that this initiative has taken a part because whoever gets the position next year will benefit definitely 100% from it.
Thank you. John, you're next.
Can you just repeat the question a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So the current system of communication between society heads and DSU is unsustainable, and further inaction will result in student societies losing any drive to continue operating. That's the statement. And the question is, how will you ensure that the communication gap between the society heads and the DSU is bridged? Like, what efforts will you put in place to ensure this happens?
I mean, I would like to see more resources going into societies generally. This, I talk about my commitment about society grants, but I would also like to see more in terms of logistics, right? Which could include staff being assigned to societies more often, which could include things like booking of rooms in the student union building online instead of having to go through an email. I think that there's lots of ways too that wouldn't necessarily add more cost to make it more effective, right, and efficient, right, such as using technology. I mean, we also have the advantage as a university, we have a computer science department, right? We have a computer science building. So I think that we have lots of smart people who could be very helpful in terms of these things on campus, right? So I think that there's a lot of opportunities for the DSU to help with societies more, both in terms of making it easier to get grants as well as making their lives easier in terms of logistics.
Perfect. Thank you. So moving on, the next question is, what are your thoughts on hosting alcohol promoted events on campus? Like, do you agree we should loosen the restrictions of alcohol on campus? John, you first.
Frankly, yes. I think that that's something that could be positive. Also, in terms of revenue for the DSU, there's potential there. I mean, we do operate the Greywood, which serves alcohol. Of course, I think we'd need to be quite strict in terms of enforcement regarding things that are not allowed. But as something as a way to generate revenue could be great. And yeah. So it's something that I definitely would be interested in looking at.
Thank you. Sharath, you're next. What are your thoughts on hosting alcohol promoted events on campus? Do you agree that we should loosen the restrictions of alcohol on campus?
Well, it totally narrows down to like what type of event we are hosting. If it's a formal event, of course not. But if it's a more social event, then we could have it, because we've seen in the residence itself from the past year where the alcohol was banned compared to now that they're allowing alcohol in the residence itself. So it's already been a transition, but we also need to consider having certain rules and guidelines strictly in place for people not to cross and to respect each other and their boundaries within the campus, and to also make sure none of the Dalhousie property is damaged because of people being drunk. And we also need to ensure that when people are drunk, there's also, during the event, there's also enough resources to help them out in case they get too drunk or alcohol poisoning, something like that. But yeah, that is something that can be done. Yeah.
Thank you. Mariam, you're next. What are your thoughts on hosting alcohol promoted events on campus? Do you agree that we should loosen the restrictions of alcohol on campus?
I think all of the answers were great, but I think we're missing something. First of all, the DSU has lost its alcohol license outside of the Greywood for 3 years right now. We lost it in 2019 due to a stupid mistake, I guess, the DSU has committed. And so there are so many things to consider before we talk about having alcohol around a DSU at least. However, on campus, I actually collaborated with our Vice Provost Student Affairs this year and helped sit the Street Party Oversight Task Force. If you've paid attention this year, rather than having the, what was the party called? Oh my God. Oh my God, completely forgot. Homecoming, yes. Thanks. The homecoming party, we were able to invite a band over. And so we kind of like controlled everything. We still allowed alcohol and all. I just think there has to be restrictions around it. I also sit on the alcohol committee. So I was able to give my opinion on things around that as well, including the residents, as Sharath said. And we also included cannabis this year, which is a great add, I guess.
Thank you. So moving on to the next question. So right now we're seeing a surge in students experiencing food insecurity. How are you going to address this crisis? Mariam, you first.
So I can talk a little bit of my experience and any goals that I have for the future. This year, as I've mentioned before, we were able to raise $75,000 in our food bank. All of this money with no deductions went straight to our food bank. We were able to stock our shelves. We were able to feed so many students, which was amazing. This was with help from Dal and also Dal alumni. So that was also a lot of communication to be able to gather this money. We also worked on a food drive where people were able to just come and leave the food, give it to whoever is in need. That besides our food bank, but also we have worked on a late night breakfast during the final season last semester, which was a win. We served around 400 to 500 students and we heard great feedback. So it's also something important to always hear from students so we're able to know how to improve these initiatives in the future. We also started improving and promoting for the $9 Greywood meals that we have, which we saw also an increase in engagement from our students. Other than that, I would just like to say that our food bank is one of, if not the best food bank that Halifax has, according to the province. Sorry, we actually do not just serve our students, but SMU students and the community. So if anything I have in mind for next year is to kind of reconsider this idea and make sure that we're serving our students first.
Thank you. John, you're next. We have seen a surge in students experiencing food insecurity. How are you going to address this crisis?
Yeah, so I'll echo Miriam. I think that the work regarding the food bank has been incredible. I think that students have a right to go to class and not worry about hunger. I think that it's shameful, the idea that a student would go to a midterm or a final, and one of the things on their mind would be that they're hungry, right? So I think the DSU has a responsibility as the representative of the student body to do everything within its power to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I think that DSU initiatives are moving forward, and I think that there's still more work to be done, but I think we're going in a good direction.
Thank you. Sharath, you're next. We have seen a surge of students experiencing food insecurity. How are you going to address this crisis?
Yeah, I do agree with Miriam's point and I appreciate her hard work with raising funds for the food bank, which has been incredible this year, which I continue to do so if I become the president. But apart from that, there's also a few other things that we can do, like increase funding for the local ladle, because when I'm speaking to them, they do have a funding deficit and they're to ask Sexton Society for some funding. And so to ensure that they are fully funded to be able to do what they're doing is one important factor. Another important factor which I would consider would be to provide to merge up with the restaurants and grocery stores in downtown to provide student discounts in exchange for advertisements. That is one way that we can encourage students to be able to buy groceries at a more subsidized version, if not free. That is also something I was thinking about.
Okay, thank you. So the next question, this is from another student. There has been a lot of talk about lowering executive salaries, but is that something you want to do, or is that something that's not on your agenda? Like, and if you want to do that, how are you going to do that? John, you're first. No, Sharath, you're first. Sorry.
To be honest, I've not really thought about reducing the executive fee because being part of the DSU and running the executive in itself is a very extensive task, and being able to be compensated for what you're doing is a great motivation to do more. So I feel that if you pay someone less for putting in so many hours, they would not be as devoted as they are at the end, because at the end of the day, even we are students and even we do face difficulties over food and housing. And in order for us to be able to completely execute our work, we need to first be able to sustain ourselves. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mariam, you're next. There has been a lot of talk about lowering executive salaries. Are you going to do that, or is that not on your agenda? And if you are going to do that, how will you manage to do that?
I 100% agree with Sharath, and no, it's not on my agenda, and I do not think about even adding it. I think there's so many misconceptions and misunderstandings of how the job of executives work. I can give you an example. I'm the president of the DSU. I work over 40 hours a week, including weekends, and I reply to over 50 to 60 emails a day. There's so much that I do that I think I could or I should be paid for. Plus, we are a student union that advocates for etiquette living for our students. So if we're advocating for students to have employment opportunities, then why do we take that from ourselves? Plus, it's a full-time job that's paying my bills, paying my rent. 50% or more of my salary pays my bill. And so I don't think I can survive without having a salary for my full-time job that's taking more than half of my time. And I honestly think this is just a populist move, because how would you make sure that the DSU is not going to be affected? How would you make sure that the executives are on the same side as you? How would you even make sure that it's going to pass council, for example? There are so many questions and issues around it.
Thank you. John, you're next. So there
Yeah,
has
so I think
been, I can repeat the question.
sure.
Okay. There has been a lot of talk about lowering executive salaries, and are you going to do that, or is that not on your agenda? Or if you are going to do that, how will you manage to do it?
Yeah, so it is on my agenda. I think that if you look around Canada, there are plenty of student unions that have executive salaries that are lower. You know, I look at the fact that there more money goes to executive salaries than goes to society grants and goes to student life events, and I think that that's a problem. I think a lot of students don't have confidence in the DSU, and I think this would be a great step both in terms of boosting funding for campus life as well as winning back the confidence of a lot of students.
Thank you.
Is there room for questions
Right now, like
in this round or
between the candidates?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we can make this a debate. Sharath, you want to go first? 45 seconds.
Yeah, I have a question for Grant, John Grant. As you mentioned that the other student unions are paying less for the executive, which similar sized University of Dalhousie is paying less for their executives in a comparison, like having a benchmark? So I just want to know, because I'm personally unaware of it, that's why.
Yeah, so this is something that I would like to follow up with you in person and bring the actual like figures to you. But I believe that an example would be UBC. I believe that their equivalent student government has an executive that's paid less, and they also have larger enrollment. But this is something that I'd like to follow up with you in person on.
Okay, Mariam, you're next.
Oh, cool. I think the Sharath question was very important. And I also would like to say that I have worked with CASA, the Canadian Alliance of Students Associations, which is a national advocacy group with all student unions and associations around Canada. I can assure you that at least 60% of those universities that get lower executive salaries are not liking it. In fact, they're asking for more. If anything, we at the DSU also have been working hard to try our best to raise our salaries. Another important thing is we do not get paid by salaries. We get honorariums, meaning that if you work less or more, you're not going to get paid any different. So these are important things to keep in mind. And also, I mean,
seconds. I'm sorry, that's
sorry,
45 seconds.
go ahead.
Yeah. So does anyone else want to give their opinion or add any comments? Okay, yeah, you're good to go, Grant.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm not advocating for a like slash and burn approach to executive salaries. I just think that a lot of students do not have confidence in the DSU. This is a great move to win back that confidence. And I would love to see the money that would be saved from that going into things that enhance campus life, such as societies.
Okay, Sharath, do you have anything to say?
No, I really appreciate John's effort to build confidence in the students, but I do believe there are many other ways that we can build confidence in the students by actually doing work rather than reducing salaries. But yeah, that's a good point, John. Like, I'm not against or anything, but yeah.
Mariam, you're next. 45 seconds.
I also do agree, and I see the vision. However, I do agree with Sharath also that we can do that by doing so many or taking a part of so many other initiatives. Another thing I wanted to mention is if we're talking about taking executive salaries and adding them to someone else, then I would give it to any other initiative but student life. We have such a huge budget for our student life programming and events, and we in fact increased the society grants this year. So I think if you did some math about our budget, you would understand that we need it in so many other departments, such as bursaries, for example.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments? Okay, then that's the end of that part of the debate. We are close to 7:30, so we'll take a 15-minute break because we've been on for like an hour, and we'll be back at 7:35, and yeah, we'll continue our debate then. Okay, thank you. You can turn off your cameras and mics, it's fine. Collective. Okay, it's 7:35. We can start the debate again now. Perfect. So we have a few student questions to go through. The first would be, what is your stance on tuition increases? John, you're first.
As the representative of the student body, I oppose tuition increases. I think that education should be as affordable as possible, and I think it's the role of the student union to advocate for tuition that is as affordable as possible.
Mm-hmm. Shrat, you're next.
Yeah, I do believe that tuition increase needs to be capped, but then it also narrows down to what the president of the student union has authority over the tuition increases. As Miriam told previously, that we needed more time than just one term to address those issues. But putting a cap on the tuition increase is something we can strongly advocate for when we are during our presidency, and all we can do is try. But then saying no to tuition increases is, I believe, is something beyond our authority as the DSU president. So all we can do is try and advocate for it.
Okay, Mariam, you're next.
Yep, I do agree with Sharad. We do not have jurisdiction over that. And we also need to understand how the structure works. So, for example, international student tuition goes under the provincial government, while the domestic one goes under kind of both. I talked to both ministers from ministers of education for both the provincial and the national level or governments. And there is a long conversation to take. So definitely not something we can do as presidents. However, as Jarath said, it's something to keep advocating for. Another thing, I think I heard something wrong. Our tuitions are capped. In fact, the domestic tuition cap has gone from 3% to 2% this year. This is also part of our advocacy as a student union with Students Nova Scotia, which is a provincial advocacy group. So that's a great win for us. However, the new MOU for the university with the government has increased international fee by 9% for all universities, this not including Dalhousie, just because we've been increasing for the past few years. So that's not really good. There's a lot going on affecting our international students, but again, all we can do is advocate and hopefully keep this continuity going on.
So moving on to the next question. What do you think are the challenges international students face, and how can they be addressed? Like the main challenges. Who's next? Mariam, you're next. Yeah, Mariam, you're on this question. 90 seconds.
Yep, I think I kind of mentioned it already, but the high tuition fee. So as I said, in the province now, international students fee is going up 9%. At Dalhousie, the province have not pressured them to increase it just because they have been increasing it for quite a while. But with some things that I can and cannot talk about, Dalhousie is thinking of increasing it anyways for next year. So you can expect the international fee to go up even higher. That's definitely one of the biggest challenges. Besides all of that, international students face a lot of housing problems. And I'm talking specifically international because of the nature of how obviously their education works. So they come from a different country. They do not know about our tenancy rights, for example. They do not know how the housing works. For example, at CBU, the students are not told how the housing crisis is so bad in Cape Breton that when the international students come, they're literally unhoused and the university is not able to do anything. Something similar is happening here at Dal. So those are two definitely most important issues. I would also just add that the food bank has seen a triple in increase of visits from international students in 1 year from last year.
Okay, thank you. John, you're next. What do you think are the main challenges international students face, and how can they be addressed?
Yeah, so, to echo Miriam, I agree. I think that there's a lack of information regarding housing. There's a lack of information provided regarding the issues and challenges that people face in Nova Scotia when they come here from abroad to study. I think that the tuition too, the rates of tuition, if you compare the rates for domestic students versus international students, is obviously a big concern. And I think that international students deserve somebody who can stand up, not overpromise, but at least, bring these points up and try to see some movement.
Okay. Thank you. Sharath, you're next. What do you think are the main challenges international students face and how can they be addressed?
Okay, there are a couple of points that international students face issues on, starting with the housing. When the new students who apply to join the residence, majority of the international students are rejected. They prioritize local, like the Canadian students over the international students. But I feel they should give a fair share of opportunity by keeping it the same percentage at least for the international students in the residence. That's number one. Number two would be the international students are not really aware of how things happen in Canada and the knowledge of the campus resources. So, like enlightening them about it is another challenge that can be overcome if dealt with the right way. And third thing would be international students do face a lot of money related issues. So trying to provide student loans to, speaking with the province and trying to provide student loans to uh, international students as well is something that can be worked on, but I'm not really sure if how it goes with the banking laws and criteria that they have to keep an asset or something because they are international students. At the end of the day, they don't have assets in Canada. So that's something which is hard but can be worked on if advocated for as well.
Thank you. So, moving on. So, what is your plan of action for implementing items outlined in your candidate questionnaire? Mariam, you're first.
Could you repeat the question again?
What is your plan of action for implementing items outlined in your candidate questionnaire?
Cool. I had three things outlined: strengthening relationship with the government. I had some academic support and talking about housing, because I feel like those are the three important pressing issues that are surrounding students. How can I achieve having a better relationship with the government is basically just talking. I think Dalhousie, I would say just the DSU has not been really active with that. We haven't been reaching out to the government. We are the biggest and most powerful student union in Atlantic Canada. We are capable of doing so many things, but unfortunately we did not in the past few years. So I was able this year, for example, to just literally send an email to my minister and be like, I have something to talk about, let's talk, and then advocate for something which I can clearly see happen afterwards with the results I've already shared. What else? Academic support. I'm working on the grading regulation policy right now. It's almost done, and I'm hoping that Senate can finally approve it. I'm trying to make a cap of 45 to 50% on final exams. This is undergoing still. And the last one was, what did I also say? Oh my God, housing. I've included or kind of talked a little bit about housing, but specifically working with DAL on making their projects more affordable and accessible for our students.
Thank you. John, you're next. What is your plan of action for implementing items outlined in your candidate questionnaire?
Yeah, so I think a big part of my plan is empowering other executives, right? When I talk about society grants and the impacts that societies have, a lot of that is the VPI who, works with societies. When I look at increasing the funding for events, a lot of that is the VPSL. So I think that a crucial part of enacting, my agenda will be making sure that the executives are supported and empowered and have the resources that they need to get the job done to enhance campus life.
Okay. Thank you. Sharath, you're next. What is your plan of action for implementing items outlined in your candidate questionnaire?
Okay, the first thing that I had outlined was providing or advocating, in the better terminologies, for 24/7 library services. I do understand that there are a lot of facility issues that might come up, like how are we going to manage the employees, how are we going to keep it open 24/7, who's liable for all the computers when people are not around. But that's something that can be worked on. And if SMU can do it, I'm pretty sure we can do it. There's just a way of working around the possibilities that can happen, right? So having good connections with the facilities and the respective departments to make things happen, we can work that out. And second thing in my questionnaire is encouraging restaurants and grocery stores in downtown to accept DAL card and offer student discounts. The reason I kept this is because if people use the DAL card and they get student discounts through it in exchange for advertisement for the business owners, that would give Dalhousie as well certain amount of liquid funds which student deposit into the DAL card, which can be used as cash flow. If you look at the Starbucks business model, they use a similar model. So I'm trying to implement that so it can be a win-win situation to Dalhousie, the students, and the business owners. And then the third thing on my questionnaires would be advocating for transparency, increased research opportunities, and more on-campus employment. So what I mean by this is, if you look at the...
I'm sorry, I have to cut you off there.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Thank you. So the next question is, what area, like based on your experience as a student or in a position of power, what areas do students need support in the most right now? Sharath, you first.
Can you repeat the question? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, based on your previous experience, what areas do students need support in the most right now?
I believe that students do need a lot of support in food and housing. That's one thing which is very important. But apart from that, there's a lot of there's students don't really understand how much of facilities that DAL offers, and they're not able to utilize it 100%. So if you're able to bridge the gap between what facilities are offered to students and what they can entail, that would really solve like half the issues that's going on. And yeah, that's one of the pressing concerns right now.
Thank you. John, you're next.
Can you kind of repeat the question?
Yeah, I'll do that. What areas do students need support most, like right now?
I would say cost of living. I would say that initiatives like the food bank are useful. You know, people are struggling right now, and we can see this on campus and we can see this off campus, right? So making sure that the DSU is doing everything within its power, right, to do what it can to help people, especially those struggling, is something that means, you know, a lot to me personally. And you know, going back to the previous example of somebody, you know, going to write a midterm and having to think about, you know, being hungry. You know, I can't even imagine that. And I think that we have an obligation to do everything within our power to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay, thank you. Mariam, you're next. What areas do students need support in the most right now?
I do agree with both Sharath and John. I mean, there's so much, but food security, insecurity, and housing are the most important ones. And that's when I also can go back to my older point when I say our salaries as executives are very, very important. I can't see myself living. I'll probably be living on the streets if I didn't have my salary. I pay my own tuition. I pay my own housing, my own food, everything. So definitely cannot live without it. Housing and food security. For housing, this year we have become observers with Students Nova Scotia, which again is a provincial advocacy group, and we have advocated to keep the housing cap under 2%. So they're not quite there yet, as in the government, but it seems like it's still on their minds and they're thinking about it. About food insecurity, again, I talked about some initiatives and some things I want to do for the future, but I also wanted to add mental health. And I would say something I did about that, or we as execs, was the psychoassessment bursary that we were able to serve our students with this year, which was really, really helpful.
Okay, thank you. So the next question would be, what will you be doing to make yourself more accessible to the general student public? The general student body. First. John, you're first.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that I've already done is I've put my personal number on all my campaign literature and encouraged people to text me, right? I think that being responsive to social media in terms of direct messages, in terms of text messages, I think that's super important. Yeah, that's essentially my plan, is to dedicate a significant amount of time to answering texts, DMs, emails, whatever means of communication that students want to use. Like, I'm happy to provide them with an opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Sharath, you're next.
Can you repeat the question one last time for me, please?
Yeah, for sure. What will you be doing to make yourself more accessible to the general student body?
Okay. Apart from the regular officers that all of us will be having as the DSU president, that they can come and meet us anytime, one thing I really plan on doing is like have a link in the DSU page, which is directed towards the president, and anyone can address issues using that link, being anonymous or non-anonymous being the choice of whoever's filling out that form, which that form directly goes to the president to if there's any pressing concerns or if they want to connect better and talk to the president about any issues. So that's one way we can increase engagement. And that is one thing that I've already implemented in being the Dalhousie Industrial Engineering president. I've given out the links to all of my students in engineering. And they personally reach out to me saying, hey, this can be done better, like a direct contact, apart from also giving the email IDs and phone numbers.
Thank you. Mariam, you're next.
Yep.
What will you be doing to make yourself more accessible to the general student body?
I think all of the mentioned points are very important, but they're so much easier said than done. Having that I, experienced this, it's very hard. Again, we get like 50 to 60 emails a day. We get DMs, we get calls to the info desk. I do not provide my phone anywhere because if so, I would get over 100 calls a day. That's something, and something else is people talking to you just to bash you is something else. So to protect myself and protect the DSU, I would not be doing that. I also wanted to say that having the commissioners is, again, a much help with that. They would be helping us with the contacts with students. That's also besides using surveys and stuff like that I've done, for example, for my co-op project. So I'm able to listen to students and plus increase the engagement with students by having more events. So for example, we had our first society gala last week, I think, and this weekend actually, and it was the first society gala in forever. And so it was a huge success and a lot of society appreciated it. And we were able to give out an award for each society for something specific. And so that's how we get the engagement, and that's how you show that you're interested and you're there to listen from them. For them.
Thank you. So the next question is, how would you being a president align with your personal values? Sharath, you first.
Aligning with my personal values, I feel like transparency and being there for the people whenever they need you is something that I really look forward for. And being the president, I do think that having these qualities is really good and ensuring the smooth transition of the DSU. Yeah.
Thank you. Mariam, you're next. How would being a president align with your personal values?
I would say by change. I mean, it's the most important value for me by to change the world for the better. But specifically speaking, as a racialized woman, I'm a POC, I'm a Muslim, I represent my religion and how I look like. So that's very important to me. One of the things I'm doing for that actually is something that will hopefully get approved by council tomorrow, which I'm really excited for. We're approving like a dollar number for EDIA society grants. So societies will only be able to get those grants if they worked on initiatives and projects related to EDIA, as in equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. So that's something great. Other than that, personal values, again, change, restructuring, and I've done all of that. So the more I grow myself, the more the DSU will grow.
Thank you. John, you're next. How would being a president align with your personal values?
Yeah, so I view myself as a progressive, and I think that the DSU has a responsibility to move forward on these issues, right? Such as what Miriam brought up. I think that's an incredible initiative. I also think that, I'm pretty utilitarian. I look at what is the bang for the buck, right? And I think that when I talk about society grants, the amount that a society can do with like a couple $1,000s is incredible, right? And I think that putting money into places where it can have the most impact is absolutely essential and important and a top priority.
Thank you. So the next question is, how do you plan to serve the whole Dalhousie community in a way that nobody feels unrepresented or ignored? Mariam, you're first.
I just did mention something. So we're working on the EDIA grants that, again, will only be granted to societies that are working on EDIA projects, just to encourage them to do so. Another thing I'm working on is also to prioritize Indigenous peoples in the housing bursary I'm also proposing tomorrow, which is a win for sure. We never had, or as far as I know, I would say, we did not have Indigenous bursaries, so that's definitely a win. Otherwise, for example, Ramadan is coming up. The DSU was never decorated for Ramadan. We have ordered a lot of decorations, and I'm thankfully taking advantage of me, being a Muslim and a president, and decorating the whole building for Ramadan and hopefully for Eid afterwards, and just to give this sense of home for all of the Muslims. And I have worked on providing a prayer room for the Muslim society. It's still ongoing. Dal is pain to work with about that, because we have very short, or I guess like not a lot of rooms to offer our Muslim students to come and pray all together on Fridays. However, it's ongoing and I've made a lot of success, I guess, or growth with it. So I'm just waiting on Dal to say the yes.
Thank you. Sharath, you're next. How do you plan on serving the whole Dalhousie community in a way that nobody feels unrepresented or unheard or ignored?
Yeah, we all, starting with the societies, we need to make sure the societies, as the questioner came before, that they're feeling underrepresented. So we need to make sure they're heard, starting with that. And then we also need to make sure the marginalized communities are being represented adequately and enough, they're given enough voice to be heard and their issues to be addressed. And third would be to be culturally sensitive towards what's happening. Say, for example, as Mariam said, there's the Ramadan coming up. So we need to make sure everyone is in a safe space to be able to pray and making accommodations for whatever event is happening now and then. That's one way to do it. Yep.
Thank you. John, you're next. How do you plan to serve the whole Dalhousie community in a way that nobody feels underrepresented, unheard, or ignored?
Yeah, so I think that relationships are crucial when it comes to making sure that the executive is on the same page as different groups. I think that a personal priority of mine will make sure that I get to as many possible events, whether it be Ramadan, whether it be Lunar New Year, whether it be whatever, but making sure that myself, as well as whoever ends up comprising the executive, aside from the winner of this election, are also making themselves available, right? Because if you're not available, if you don't have those relationships, it can be difficult to understand and to know the issues that people are facing.
Thank you. So now, what are some current accessibility issues at Dalhousie? Like, talk about your approach and your plan to fix that. John, you're first.
Yeah, so I understand that the accessibility office, the accommodations office, is part of Dalhousie University. So I think that the DSU should seek out opportunities to work with them more directly as the representative of the student body. I think that things such as making sure people with disabilities are able to navigate, and that we're not creating spaces that make life harder for people with physical disabilities is important. Such as making sure we have like accessible elevators. Yeah, so I think it's certainly a priority to make sure that everybody on campus feels included, and that certainly includes people with disabilities, whether they be physical or mental.
Thank you. Mariam, you're next. What are some current accessibility issues at Dalhousie, and what are your plans to work on that?
That's a really good question. So, for example, I sit on the Engagement and Transitioning Committee with Dalhousie, and we talk a lot about accessibility. We also have an accessibility counselor, which we can work with closely to get these stuff done. It's important to acknowledge and differentiate the mental, disabilities from the physical disabilities, and have someone who actually represents those peoples to come and talk about their struggles, hear from them, and then we can, execute our goals. We also have, and planning on having equity grants that will help those people. And again, we have the psycho-assessment bursary that we started this year, which is very, very helpful for our people, for I guess, people with disabilities. We also need to ensure that students who have been marginalized and who are first generations who might not have visible disabilities also access these resources. And so much can be done.
Thank you. Sharat, you're next. What are some current accessibility issues at Dalhousie, and how do you plan on fixing them?
I believe one of the accessibility issue that we're facing right now is hybrid studies, where some of the classes, especially in engineering, as far as I'm aware of, are in person, which they doesn't necessarily need to be that way. Say, suppose, what happens if someone's injured or they're not feeling well? They just skip class and you miss the entire day of lecture. But if it's hybrid, it'll be a better way to treat it. And these classes can be hybrid. So that's one way to do it. And also to ensure that the campus facilities are accessible to the students for those with disabilities. This includes updating the physical infrastructure as well as the digital resources.
Thank you. So now we have a student question. They say that a lot of the events and facilities at Dalhousie focus on undergraduate students. So how do you plan on supporting graduate students? Sharat, you first.
Can you repeat the question? I lost you there.
Yeah. Most events and facilities at Dalhousie do focus on undergraduate students. So how do you plan on supporting graduate students?
So firstly, I'm pretty sure there would already be a representative from the grad students at the DSU. So making sure they are proactive and being able to attend all meetings and to see what's happening at the DSU is one important step towards it. And also trying to welcoming them to more events on campus, because what's happening is whenever I speak to people from grad, they feel that the events that are happening are only for the undergrads, but educating them to say that, hey, even you're welcomed is something that needs to be done. And that way we can make sure even they're involved in whatever we are doing.
Thank you. John, you're next. Most events and facilities at Dalhousie right now do focus on undergraduate students. How do you plan on supporting the graduate students?
Yeah, so I think that, as the DSU, our responsibility is to represent all students. And I believe that graduate students certainly deserve to be represented. I know that graduate students, I'm thinking back to campaigning today, right? And, oftentimes you'd have conversations with graduate students. And I think that graduate students certainly use facilities such as the Student Union Building, right, are certainly involved in society. So, I think in general, a DSU that's more effective, that's more reformed, will benefit graduate students. So I think that, going back to my priorities, if I get elected, I think that certainly graduate students will benefit with more society funding. Graduate students will benefit with more event funding. So, I view that as a way to help all students, including graduate students.
Okay. Thank you. Mariam, you're next. Most events and facilities right now at Dalhousie do focus on undergraduate students. So how do you plan on supporting the graduate students?
We can work on improving the BIPOC student mentorship academy that we have. There is so much that the BIPOC students from the grad department add to our community and add to our educational system, and so that's something very important. We have to increase research funding, of course, but we also have to keep in mind that Dalhousie gets the highest amount of research funding from the government. And so this is not something attainable we can do. In fact, the government has been focusing on CBU because they have a huge amount of grad students, but with literally zero research funding for their grad students. So I'm not going to promise anything around that. And we're going to be offering the grads more opportunities, and the DSU will connect the grad students with positions on Senate, for example, to advocate themselves, because usually the Senate reaches out to us for students who are interested in sitting on Senate or any other board that's, accepting general members. And so grad students would be great options for these positions.
Thank you. We have another student question. So they say that the Sexton campus feels like a different isolated campus. So how do you plan on bringing the Sexton campus closer to Carlton and Studley? So Mariam, you're first.
Great question. We have noticed that this year, and we've actually worked on it. So one of the things we're doing is actually using our office on campus. On Sexton, campus. I don't know if you guys know, but we have an office in the library building, I believe it is. And now we go on turns, executives and commissioners, to make sure that we have a presence there and to hear our students. Plus, our VPSL has been advocating a lot and working hard to show presence on Sexton. We also actually offered a few projects to work on with dues, for example. We've been seeing great initiatives coming up. We've been seeing great results coming from that. So it's really just presence. Yeah, that's what they want. We've heard from them in the beginning. We've sat down with a few societies, and that's how we executed our goals right after that.
Thank you. John, you're next. Sexton campus seems a bit disconnected in terms of events, presence, and everything. So how do you plan on bringing the Sexton campus closer to Studley and Carlton?
Yeah, so first of all, I agree with the point that it does feel disconnected. I do think that the current student union is making good progress towards making it better. But I think that if you look at campus life, such as events, right, making sure that we're emphasizing that we're putting priority on events on the Sexton campus, because I think most people will acknowledge, or at least it's my personal opinion, that campus life on Sexton should be better. We should put more of an effort into making sure that it's not everything just happening on our primary campus, and that there are events and things going on Sexton.
Thank you. Sharath, you're next. The Sexton campus seems disconnected in terms of events and presence. How do you plan on bringing the Sexton campus closer to Studley and Carlton?
Yeah, I do feel that we got to start with using the office room, which is there on the Design Commons, which has been vacant for the most part that I've seen. And the second thing is to work closely with the DUES. I personally was on the DUES as the VP internal for 2 years before, and we need a bit more of proactive involvement with the DUES to connect with the engineering campus, because it does represent a lot of students as part of the whole Dalhousie family. And also in general, just hosting events at Sexton itself, because I'm confident that Sexton has the facilities to offer and host events there. But for some reason, there not been many events that have been focused towards Sexton. So at least having engineering related events at least would help them promote or involve them on campus. That's something I'd focus on.
Thank you. So we are reaching the end of the debate. So I'd say it's time for your closing remarks. All of you have 1 minute, and yeah, we can go in the opposite order. So John, you first.
Yeah, so I think I've been very clear in terms of my priorities for the student union, and that is doing more and as much as we possibly can to get more people involved in terms of campus life, right? This is in terms of societies, this is in terms of student life events. I want everybody on campus to feel included, and I want everybody on campus to be part of the community, right? And, you know, as somebody who took their first classes during COVID, this means a lot to me. You know, I feel that my life is much better now, and I've made a lot of friends and become more involved. So really, I see this campaign as an opportunity to give back and to try to make the DSU into an organization that puts much more of an emphasis on terms of campus life and gets more people to a place where they're making new friends and where they're, you know, excited and happy to be on campus.
Thank you. Mariam, you're next.
Yep. I want to express that my time at the DSU has been more than just a role. It has been a profound commitment to each and every one of our students. And together we have embarked on a journey of transformation, reshaping the landscape of our student experience and addressing critical issues such as academic support, accessibility, housing, food insecurity, everything I've touched on. Yet, as much as I have achieved, there is still so much more to work on. With the unwavering support I'll be getting from students, I am definitely committed to continuing this journey, ensuring that the DSU remains not just an institution, but also a vibrant community where all the voices are heard. So as we're on the, again, edge of the new chapter, at least for me, I'm inspired by the momentum everyone has worked on this year and the victories that we have won, such as reaching quorum at the AGM for the first time in 8 years. And I really want to continue and keep this momentum going to keep our voices ring loud and let our actions speak volumes.
Thank you. Sharath, you have your 1 minute.
In conclusion, my candidacy for the DSU president is deeply rooted in a commitment to leverage my extensive campus engagement and approachability to advocate effectively for all students to provide a better on-campus facilities and jobs. My experience have not only prepared me to address these challenges for our community, but also amplify the voices of those often overlooked. So by electing me, you're choosing a leader dedicated to foster a more inclusive, responsive, and vibrant university environment. And together, we can lead in a new era of student empowerment and collective success at Dalhousie University. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That is the end of the debate. Now the floor is open to the audience to ask questions. If anyone has any questions, raise your hand in Teams, and yeah, you can ask after that. Yep, Yuki, you're good to go.
Hi, so I look at the campaign thing, and obviously a lot of candidates have been advocating for cutting their own salary, right? Including John. So I just saw earlier during the debate where you say you're gonna cut a little bit of your own salary, but in your campaign it also say double the society grant and double the what's it called, the student life grant. So how are you gonna cut a little bit of your salary but double the amount? So the math is not mathing. And I would also like to state that I don't like people that make empty promises to people. So I would love to hear people that you promise that you're going to cut your own salary. I just want to remind you that you can't do it next year because things have to go through a lot of things. You have to go through council. You have to go through the AGM. So since you're so excited to cut your own salary, why don't you pledge to us that you actually gonna cut your own salary? If all your other executives doesn't agree cutting your own salary, do you agree that you should cut your own salary?
Absolutely. I'm willing to cut my own salary regardless of the other executives. I'm willing to put forward whatever motion within my power to fulfill that promise. I'm absolutely willing to do. I think regarding the other promises, I think they're very achievable. If you look at the percentage of the budget that goes to specifically student life events and specifically society grants, it's not a very large percentage. So doubling them would be very, very doable.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or follow-up questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Are we able to debate or talk?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to mention that we, in fact, do have a very high number or a high dollar number for our events. Just events are actually $200,000 we have only for events. A lot of it goes for a week, and I honestly think I would shock you if I said how much we spend for a week. We have enough. I'm not saying that this idea is completely wrong or unattainable, but I think there are so many other ways we can increase the funding for these student life events and programming, or even just like enhance them in any way possible without having to cut the executive salaries.
I think aside from the raw financial aspect, I think that a lot of students don't have confidence in the DSU, and I think this would be a good first step in terms of building the confidence within the student body.
I do see another question on our table. It says, so when you talk about the different ways of the other ways in which you can promote finances, how would that be? Like other ways of promoting, like instead of deductions, instead of salary deductions, what other ways would you suggest?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question.
So what they say is, Mariam talked about there are different ways instead of just reducing executive salaries. So that's the point they are trying to ask about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly there's ways to make the DSU more efficient. I think that there's processes that right now are being done by staff that could be done better with like an online portal that could be cheaper to make. So I think there's lots of opportunities to reduce costs aside from just cutting executive salaries. I also think that the revenues do tend to go up over time, right, in terms of the student union. So even just with that, you probably would be able to, again, this is into the future and we don't know. I mean, the revenues could go down next year, right? There's policy going on with the federal government in terms of international students that could have an impact on enrollment, right? So this is not something where I want to make a direct promise or try to predict the future. But yeah, no, I think that there's plenty of ways in which to make the numbers work on this regarding society grants and specifically student life event funding, which would not include a week.
Does anyone else want to address that? Okay, so we have another question from Ishan. Yep, you're good to go. Ishan, you can.
Hi there. I was just looking to ask and see what each of your understandings and experiences is with regards to the senior administration at DAL, specifically with regards to the Board of Governors and Senate, and what your overall understanding is of that policy and overall structure at DAL there, because certainly as the DSU president, it's an important role to be able to advocate and speak to both of those governing organizations.
Anyone can go first. Yeah.
I think this is a very important point and a very important question. So as president, we sit on both the Senate and the Board of Governors at Dalhousie. And so one thing we need to understand before even defining those senior administration is, where do we stand? What's the definition of the DSU? I think a common misconception is that the DSU is under DAL, and that's very much wrong. We are a completely separate entity than DAL. We have our own bylaws and policies. So that being now understood, Senate, Board of Governors is the highest authority or power authority that we have at the university. We also sit on it, so we have the responsibility of voicing our students in these places, because that's when you can actually fight and fight for the rights for the students, just generally speaking. And on Senate, we also need to understand that under Senate, there are so many committees that we also get to sit on. So, for example, I'm working, again, talking about the grading policy that I'm changing. It has to go through the faculty members first and the SLTC. From there, it has to go to the Senate. So they have so much power, and we need to use that power as presidents, because believe it or not, although we are students, we as a student union president have more power than those random members sitting on Senate and Board of Governors. We're kind of on the same level as the president of Dalhousie, of the university. So yeah, that's just something good to keep in mind.
Wants to go next?
Okay, I can go. Can you just repeat the question if you don't mind, Ishan? Is he there?
Yeah, you're muted, Ishan.
Hi there. Yeah, sorry. My question was whether what your understanding is of the overall senior administration at DAL is, specifically with regards to the Board of Governors and Senate. And certainly because the DSU president has a critical and important role in both of those institutions, and whether you could speak on what your understanding is of the structure of governance at Dalhousie University.
Okay, that's a very good question. Thanks for asking. Firstly, we need to start off by understanding what powers and limitations the DSU president has before we move forward to it. And then second thing, starting off, we can, though I might not have sat in the DSU before, but then there's always a learning curve and a transition phase from the old president to the new president in case if that happens. And there's always a contact list which needs to be updated. And then we can always start off by building the relationships with the important decision makers. And the previous president can introduce us to the policies and the people who are involved and in authority to make this all happen. So irrespective of if we have the experience or not by sitting in the DSU, with the proper transition, I strongly believe that anyone can uh, do this role pretty well.
John, do you want to answer the question first, and then we'll go back to Mariam?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the DSU obviously has representation within the Board of Governors and the Senate. I think that we have a duty to the student body to act as strong representatives based on the interests of the student population, right? I think that if we're not going to stand up against tuition increases or against certain policies pursued by the administration that are opposed by students, then like who is, right? So I think it's one of the greatest responsibilities in terms of the role. And I intend to continue in that tradition of the DSU being strong advocates on behalf of the student body on the board and the Senate.
Mariam, you have a comment or a response?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on Sharad's point and say that I don't think anyone can do it. I think it's something to be a president at a student union and something else to sit on Senate and Board of Governors, the highest power authority that Dalhousie has. There is so much that goes on in these committees, and so it needs someone who's one, confident, who knows the policies and bylaws, three, knows the definition and the changes or differences, I guess, between the DSU and the institution. And I also did want to mention that I think it's an asset for me because I already have this experience and I don't need to relearn it. So I think that's something just good to note. And yeah.
Sharad or John, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I guess I apologize. I should have reworded it better, as Mariam said, but you do need to have all the dedication and passion to sit in such an important position to be able to do what you're doing. So yeah, not anyone can do it, but as long as you have the passion and the confidence and what it takes to be a DSU president, then yeah, you can do it.
Are there any more comments?
I will say that, you know, I have profound confidence in the people who've put themselves forward who would be sitting on the board of governors, regardless of who wins any of these elections. So in general, I think that the DSU is going to be in good hands regarding its representation on the board in the Senate.
Okay. Thank you. Now we have another question from Antonia. Yep, you're good to go. You can unmute your mic and ask the question. Looks like they have an issue. One second. Okay. So looks like there aren't any more questions. So that would be the end of the debate. Thank you so much for everyone to be here like for the presidential debate. Oh, okay. They have. Okay. No worries, no worries, no worries. Go ahead, go ahead. Oh, you can just unmute yourself and ask the question.
I just want to say that it shows to me that you've muted her, so I don't think she can control it.
No, it's like I have everyone muted when they join, and I can allow them to unmute themselves.
Yeah.
So now it's like when it's a slash, that means it's on their end, and that when it's like a error sign, like a circle and a slash in between, that
Yeah,
means
it
I'm
just changed. Sorry.
I mean, if there are like technical difficulties, you can always type in the question.
I'll just turn on the chat. That should help for now. Okay, there you go. The chat should work now. So if you have the question, you can just type it in the chat. Just letting everyone know this will be the last question. So I'll just read it out for everyone. So all of you touched on major topics like housing and student services, but what would each of you like to bring for more awareness on mental health on campus? So we can go in any order. Whoever wants to go first.
Sure, I guess I can go. Like, we do have adequate amount of mental health services around campus, like the same day counseling and the good to talk, all of those, but these services are not promoted as much as they should be. And promoting them is one thing that can help bridge the gap between the students and the services that are being offered at Dow.
Okay, Mariam, you're next.
A few things about this. So I did already mention the psycho-assessment bursary that we offered this year, which was very helpful for people who are struggling with their mental health or anything around this disability. I would also say, and I'm happy to also, I guess, announce that our CERC, or the Sexual Education Resource Center, has finally opened last week. It's a very new center that we have at the DSU. We worked very hard on establishing it this year. And part of it is emphasizing a lot on mental health, but specifically in the sexual harassment and assault realm. So that's something I'm really proud of doing this year. Otherwise, definitely working with Dell on increasing the amount of consultants, I think, or therapists that we have. So we do have a good amount. However, it's also great to mention that although we have so many doctors, generally speaking, 4 of these doctors that we have at Health and Wellness Center are only for students. The others are literally serving the whole community, alumni from Dal, anyone who's in need of mental health support or any type of health support in Nova Scotia can use them. And so definitely work with Dal on increasing the number of doctors who are specifically there for students, because I think it's just unfair for me to have to book an appointment that's like in 3 or 4 weeks just for them to check my hand, or I don't know,
do
check
have
a
to cut
pimple
you
that I
off
have.
there. I'm
It's
sorry,
insane.
I do have to cut you off there. That's yeah, John, it's your turn, because we have another debate after this. That's why.
Yeah,
John.
so I agree fundamentally that mental health is a huge concern on campus, and I can speak to this with like a personal anecdote. So recently, I was diagnosed with ADHD, which certainly in retrospect has had a big effect on my academic performance up until like relatively recently. So that was a huge positive thing in my life, especially in my grades. I was unaware of programs at Dal that would have been helpful in terms of going through the school or going through the student union. So I think that making the information accessible and putting it out to students would be very helpful, because I think, in my case, if I would have known about maybe some of the information or some of the things regarding the health plan, it could have helped me navigate the system earlier. And I think that would have been helpful for me on a personal level.
Okay. Sounds good. So we are okay. We can get one more question in. Yeah, just a quick question. Like this question, each of you get 45 seconds, and yeah, then we wrap up the debate. Reducing this. Okay, I think it's basically like highlighting a couple of points that reducing the salaries might have 2 concerns. First would be deter students from low income backgrounds to work in these roles without compensation. And the second would be like historically a lot of the seats have gone vacant. So how do you think these concerns will be addressed in that situation?
Yeah, so I think that on the point about recruiting candidates, I think that the DSU should do a better job in terms of making it known about the positions, especially prior to the campaign period. So I think that there's a lot that should be done regarding recruitment in general, right? And I think that, frankly, I'm not advocating a radical decrease. I'm advocating a small decrease in the salaries as a statement to the student body that, like, we get it. We understand that a lot of students don't necessarily have confidence in the DSU, and we're going to take some steps to try to win back that confidence. And I think that that's very important. And I would like the DSU to be much more popular on campus. And I think it's a good first step in terms of building confidence.
Thank you. Yeah, Mariam, you're next.
I again would like to say that not having confidence in the DSU has nothing to do with exec salaries. In fact, if anything, there are so many initiatives that we can do, such as literally as simple as increasing our presence on Sexton campus or working more with societies, which we've done this year and we've seen great results for. Again, that's not to say that it's a bad idea. I just think there are so many more better ideas. I think the low income, from what the question is saying, the low income students are not going to be happy with this solution. People are working over 40 hours a week to be able to pay their bills. Literally just housing, the housing crisis in Halifax is crazy. Just for your information, we have 7% of the students in Nova Scotia that are unhoused, and 19% of them are in crowded housing. So let's just keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you. Sharath, you have 45 seconds.
It's more of a question to it, Grant. Is that okay? Or
Yeah. So do you want me to repeat the question?
No. I mean, I do have a question for Grant, like based on what he said. So am I allowed to ask him?
Yeah.
Okay.
45 seconds, you can do whatever you want.
Okay. Grant, as you said, by decreasing the salaries, it gains confidence. But say, suppose, like, imagine I don't know what DSU is, like a random student, and you getting paid 40 grand or 35 grand. What difference does it make to me if I'm a normal student? And how would that increase confidence?
Yeah, so I think using the example that you just said, which would be a reduction of 5,000, that's a significant amount of money, you know, in terms of societies. I think specifically about what, you know, the outdoor society could do with a grant of $5,000. You could send, you know, many people out camping, or, you know, Nova Scotia is a beautiful place. You know, there's lots of destinations that you could go. You could send more people to Model Young conferences, right? So I think that sure, it might not impact like everybody, but just, you know, using the numbers that you just brought up, you know, I think you could make a significant impact on the lives of many students just with that alone.
Perfect. I think that's where we have to end. Yeah, we are already a little bit over time.
Okay.
But yeah, this is the end of the presidential debate. Thank you so much for everyone for being here, the candidates and the audience. And now we will commence with the Faculty of Agriculture Representative Q&A. The president candidates are free to go.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, have a nice day.
You too, thanks.
So it's 8:30, around 8:35. Yeah, and we now will just go through the Faculty of Graduate Studies Faculty of Agriculture Q&A. Sorry. We have a few announcements. The meeting is being recorded. So and the chat feature is turned off. Like it's turned on right now because of the issues. And at the end of the debate or the Q&A, the audience will be given the opportunity to ask questions by raising their hands, and they can unmute their mics and ask away. If an audience member is being disruptive, they will be removed from the meeting. This is the final event of the night, and so I'll be asking questions to the candidate, and they will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. This will go on for around 20 minutes. Or around 8 questions, after which the floor will be open for the audience to ask any questions. So when there are 5 seconds left, I'll just raise my hand to indicate that, because I'll unfortunately have to cut you off at the end of 90 seconds. So first question, why are you running for the position and how are you qualified for the position?
So I observed that there is a gap between faculty and agriculture and main Halifax campus. So I want to minimize that gap, and my one of my another objective, I want to enhance this campus life, but by promoting sustainable initiatives and make a positive impact on our agricultural community around this place. And answer to the second question, why I think I'm qualified for this one. I have a strong background in IT, agriculture, and leadership, and commitment to inclusivity. And I believe I am well equipped to serve as a representative of the agricultural campus. Yeah.
Thank you. So next question, how do you plan to best represent the Faculty of Agriculture in the council?
So in this faculty, I have asked many questions from my fellow friends, even colleagues. So I have been in touch with the undergrad to grad to PhD students in different locations actually. So I know they're asking, I know their gaps, I know what they intend to say and what the challenges for them is. So that is how I want to address in the upcoming sessions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the next question would be, So agriculture campus might have students from different walks of life, like all walks of life. So how
Yeah.
do you plan to navigate the different needs of students from all walks of life?
So we have a few gatherings here and there, and I want to accommodate that in one place. And previously we don't have any representative here last year specifically. So there is a gap between people, student don't know where to go home to talk with, what to ask even. So we have one section of student union, that dogs. So dogs actually the very specific to the agricultural campus, but DSU has a wide range of work. So that we want to be on that flow, and we want to achieve that one. Like think about the undergraduate students, so they don't know where to go. DAGS is for the graduate students, so there is a gap in between them and the DSU, I think. Yeah. So I'm here to minimize that one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the next question would be, so what does an accessible campus mean to you?
Sorry. Accessible campus to me, it's first of all, like access to the information first. So any kind of I don't have all the information that my student needs, but I know where to go, whom to talk, and to guide them. And also if I dedicate some of my time to support them for their health, for their education, for their even different issues of financials even, so we can guide them. And I think that is the main thing of my concern. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the next question I have is, what is the most pressing issue that you plan on advocating towards?
Pressing issues, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice question. So, the pressing issue is now, to me, in one word, is more of a vibrant campus we need. It's more of, I think, in my, even in the campus, it's kind of detached, department to department. It's not even about the Halifax and the AC campus. Rather, in between the campus, it is like kind of detached. So I want to make this campus more of vibrant as a community where everyone feels welcome, valued, and supported. Whether it's advocating for academic resources, promoting sustainability initiatives, or enhancing the campus life. So I'm dedicating to making positive impact for our agricultural community here. Yeah.
Thank you. How do you plan on bridging the gap between the main Dalhousie campus and the agriculture campus?
So here some of the issues can be solved here. Like example, if I take from the other talk, that the mental health. So we have our setup here and everything. uh, Migration issues, like paper of immigration and everything. We have this setup here, but some of the issues are not addressed in this campus, which me myself take to the main campus. And even if I need some support, like more extensive support here, then I can reach out to DSU and other bodies for our support. One of the thing is like extensive mental health support. I would say that is a very concern for us right now, and maintaining the exact working hour for the students. Some of the students are seems like working here for day and night, and they don't have a social life at all. So I really want to focus that one, and it's a real problem. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So how do you plan on supporting the marginalized groups on your campus?
Can you repeat the question again, please? Sorry.
Yeah, how do you plan on supporting the marginalized groups on the agriculture campus, like the disadvantaged groups?
Who are not advantageous, right? That means,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So so I deeply understand the challenge and opportunity facing in this community. because I have very integrated relationship with everyone, as I told earlier, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves to work collaboratively with the students and the faculty, and also with the admin. This is a very important point, like to work with the administration to drive a meaningful change.
Okay, thank you. So the next question would be, oh, well, 1 second. So, what previous experience do you have that would help you in this role?
Yeah, I think I answered that one, but for the sake of answer, I'm going to
Yeah.
answer that one again. So I have a strong background. Starting from a project management to agriculture, like maintaining the people, managing the people, and I got my leadership experience, and I have a commitment to the inclusivity. So I think this is make me more to well equipped to serve as a representative of the agricultural campus. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So another question: how does your role, how would your role align with your personal values?
Oh, this one. So my personal value, one of the my personal values is to help. I would rather use this word like unprivileged students, because somehow they are unprivileged in some points. So I always try to help them. If you ask me how, so I'm engaged with some of the volunteer work for the student to help support them. Like example, like new student came here for the driving license, and this is starting from there actually. So I'm ready to support them, work with them collaboratively with the students, and give them a good experience out of the scope of what now recent offerings are. Yeah.
Okay. What is the biggest issue you have faced in your previous roles that you think would help you towards this role?
My leadership experience, I would say, and as I just told, like my values. So I want to help people. So that's the main motivation for me for this election. So it's not bounded by this position though, but I'm trying to help it. But I think this position will give me a wing and a wide range of opportunity to help people more. Yeah.
Okay. So I think I have one last question. Why
Yeah.
should the voters vote in your favor? Like
Okay.
what difference you bring compared to last year? Like when there was no candidate.
Okay, I want to hear the question again, please. I understand
Okay.
the question though, but I want to hear the question again. Yeah.
So why should the voters vote in your favor? Like last year the position was
Mhm,
empty, but this
mhm.
year why should they vote for you?
Okay. So I think people know me all over the faculty member and the administrating till to date, and they know that I'm one of them who can build a stronger and more vibrant community that reflect our values. When we say our, I mean the whole community value and aspiration. So I think that's why they will support and they will vote me in this election.
Okay. I That's all the questions I have.
Yeah,
Like I don't think we have audience, but a few of those questions were from students which were
yeah,
submitted on Airtable. So yeah, that would be the end of the Q&A. Like there are no more questions. So this is the end of the first day of debates. Thank you so much for being here.
yeah.
And tomorrow we'll have the debates for Vice President Internal, Vice President Student Life, and the Faculty of Graduate Studies representative starting at 6 p.m. So thank you so much.
Thank you
Have a nice
for your
day.
time.
Have a
Yeah,
good night.
you too. Bye.